pledge of allegiance to the flag, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Close enough to 10. I'll call the meeting to order. We do have one addition. Two additions.
We need to do a resolution to appoint our new road superintendent, and I forgot to add meeting minutes, so we've got 3 sets.
Okay. This is so that Frank can hear us. 10 o'clock, public comment for anything that's not on the agenda.
Excuse me.
Any public comment? Sheriff?
I agree.
Okay. Then we go on to the business at hand. The first one is WCCF agreement, Warner Creek Correction Facility amendment. Commissioner Reynolds?
This is an amendment to, for the master agreement 515 with Warner Creek and our road department. I believe that with the early retirement of our road official, this was not brought before us. So this is truly a ratification. I signed it on 9/29/16, so it could be in on time. So at this point, I'll move to approve or ratify the approval of amendment number 3, the State of Oregon Department of Corrections, Warner Creek Correctional Facility, or on after referred to as ODOC in Lake County.
Motion been made second to ratify the agreement with the Department of Corrections, Warner Creek. And that basically just extends for 1 year of the agreement, correct? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Aztec Solutions, Helion server upgrade. Denise, can you give us a brief?
I can. So what this is for, during budget time, I brought forward some projects, some IT projects for this year. One of those is an upgrade for the software utilized in the clerk's office. This is just the proposal from Aztec for their install and their part in the upgrade. It does include the server itself. All equipment and everything is included in this. It was approved during budget time. It is for $8,055.
I'll make a motion that we approve the helium and server upgrade as presented.
Second motion.
Motion made second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Go to the additions. Appointment of roadmaster, road official.
So this requires resolution by statute, and I haven't had a chance to ask Mr. Bailey what that statute number is, but Commissioner Kessler has asked that we add that to our resolution before signing. So off the top of your head.
I have not committed all the statutes to memory, so I'll find out and tell you.
Okay.
If it's required by statute, I'm thinking it just would be. So
Correct. We can insert the reference. You can approve or pass the resolution, and we just make the scrivener's correction to the resolution.
So I think probably Mr. Chair, if you'll indulge me, it'd be a great time to introduce Kevin Hawk. Kevin Hawk is our new road official, road superintendent that we've hired. Welcome, Kevin. If you want to come up with me for just a second and give a quick overview. He hit the ground running, and appreciate him coming on.
Yes.
Started officially, I guess, Monday of this week, October 3rd. Came from Pennsylvania, where I worked for the DOT there and managed their paving and their chipping operations for District 3, which is the northeast part of the state, and I did that for about 12 years. And prior to that, I worked road construction since I was out of high school. Put myself through Penn State University, and I guess you could say vacationed a lot out here in Lakeview area, got to liking it, and so thought I'd make a change.
And you did some, well, your vacation, you cowboyed.
Yeah, I worked for Ed Garrett Ranch as a I might as well say a kid, and got to liking this area and came back every spring to bring calves, so. Now I live here.
You needed a slower pace of life.
Yeah.
Yep.
Welcome aboard and thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead with the meeting minutes.
We do need to do the resolution.
Oh, the resolution, yeah.
I'll make the motion in the matter of appointing Lake County road official designation as Kevin Hawk to approve resolution number 16-10-05.
I'll second it.
Motion so made. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we go ahead and get the minutes out of the way.
So we have 3 sets, September 7, September 19, and September 21.
Did we guys have a chance to?
Yes, move to approve all minutes as stated.
I'll second the motion. Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. The other topic on the agenda is code ordinance enforcement decision. It's been ongoing for some time. We need to at least identify a path that we're going to address the code enforcement and such. There was one proposer a month or so ago, maybe having it in the sheriff department. Michelle has some concerns about that. So we need, this was intended for a work session yesterday, so it'll be more of a discussion. But I would take comments initially from the public, if you have comments, and then I'll close the public so we can discuss it.
So, Commissioner, are we gonna have comments on the need for it or on the position itself and where it might be located? Because we all understand the need for it.
We have the need. As I sent out, we're going to either contract it, have an employee, when we're going to do it, according to the budget, part-time, full-time, et cetera, so.
So maybe a little bit of overview of during the budget process, how we got to where we're at today.
It's open for
You
discussion.
know, over the years, there's been, this is finally the year that we were able to put a little bit of money towards this. Probably not enough to fund completely the enforcement side of it and everything, but anyways, Dan, you pretty much spearheaded that at your budget time, if you give an overview and give us an idea of, the audience an idea of where we're at budgetary.
Okay. Well, and I think, is Ann here? I thought she was here.
Shall we go get it?
No, that's okay, thank you. So during the budget hearings that we held, we had them on a Wednesday and on a Friday. And after our Wednesday meeting, I met with Sheriff Taylor. I've been looking at the budget pretty closely and available funds. We've recognized, as we said earlier, we have a huge need in this county for code enforcement around a lot of areas, but nuisance is one of the ones that's most discussed. So the short version of this is I told Sheriff Taylor that I would be proposing the next day in our budget meeting to the budget committee that we insert a certain amount of money into the budget, in the sheriff's budget for the time being, because it was too short a time frame. You typically don't budget that way. But too short a time frame to have all the discussions that were necessary to determine where this position might land. And in that discussion I had with the sheriff, he had proposed, and Sheriff, correct me any place here I'm wrong, about the possibility of having an additional deputy position and then spreading that out among all the deputies, the code enforcement work. I was, as I told him, pretty much lukewarm to that idea, but we went to the budget meetings on that Friday, It was approved by the Budget Committee to insert it. And from there, Under Sheriff Alma wasn't here, he was in training during that time frame. We had some additional discussions later on about, and that's probably more where the idea of having those duties spread among all the deputies, but it was pretty obvious that we probably weren't gonna get there right then, as it related to the sheriff's department, housing that position. So we just continued the discussion. I had got a hold of, and he's present today, Carl Shumway, and let him know, because he's been an interested party in this for a number of years, what the county and the board and the budget committee had initially talked about. Met Carl up, I think, at the Fort Rock meeting. We visited up there and had lunch. And then put together a group meeting of department heads and other elected officials that we thought might have a role in how we ended up getting to where we needed to get. And ask all those folks to be able to be available to go to the north end of the county. We have the problem throughout the whole county, but to go to the north end of the county, meet with Carl and anyone else that he wanted to meet with, have us meet with, and we spent a good part of the day up there looking at a lot of issues around nuisance. And Carl, you can add what you'd like as far as what else we looked at, but it was around nuisance and potentially planning, building ordinances, etc. So that's kind of in a nutshell how we got to that point in time, because I think that was in late June. Then we went into the budget adoption phase. We moved the money out of the sheriff's department and put it in holding in the contingency because we hadn't came to agreement as a county entity as to where and what that position might look like. What we did say was we were committed to getting there so that we could start to have an active program on behalf of the citizens of Lake County.
Do you have an idea on how that would be initiated?
That's for discussion.
That's what we're talking about now. We've talked about it, Don. Individually, it currently resides in the planning department under the leadership of Darwin Johnson. Darwin's got a lot of stuff going on in planning. We need to have a more aggressive program, a positive aggressive program, because we have a lot of problems, and we recognize that.
Well, I understand the county took over a property over on the business park over there, and it's a mess. Has tons of cars and appliances around it, and you guys just want to sell it without cleaning it up. Is that correct?
So let me give you an update to that. So, it took a while to go through the process to get the last occupants of that property out of it. Right after the initial auction, they did vacate the property, and we sold it about a month ago. And the new owner understands that he needs to be cleaning up, and he is, working on doing so.
Is there a time frame on it?
There's no time frame that was given, but certainly the owner is a responsible, human being who's going to be doing his best to get it cleaned up as quickly, financially, possible that he can. So they will be living at that location, so they, have children and they will be cleaning it up, so.
On this discussion, as Commissioner Shown said, it was brought up on the second day of the budget. It was never really discussed amongst us commissioners, so it wasn't fully stepped out in process. And I'd like for us, the three commissioners, to kind of line out a path that we're going.
Yeah, I totally agree, and just to add to that, because it wasn't until we saw all of the potential ability financially to do this at the budget time, my comment was simply, we don't have the answer right now, but let's not wait another year to have this discussion, and that's why it got inserted in the budget. It was one of those proverbial carts in front of the horse as far as being able to clearly say this is the way the program's going to roll out.
But the commitment of this board to roll a program out that would be one that would be meaningful and have the results that we all want to see, we didn't want to wait another year. So that's, as Commissioner Kestner just said, that's where we're at right now.
And this, we need discussion amongst ourselves, whether this would be enforcement of planning zone codes, enforcement of building codes, enforcement of nuisances such as, you know, house nuisance, whatever, and also whether we want to incorporate animal control within it. So kind of like, that's the type of duties, and then we can assign, determine where that duty would lie in. So tossing in animal control, we haven't discussed that either. So I'd like some ideas.
Well, there's, all of us have many different ideas. It's a matter of whether we're gonna reorganize the department, put more duties on, bring an employee in the department, and what those duties are gonna be. For me, we have building, and they do code enforcement. We have planning, they do land use enforcement. For me, it seems to fit that department. Maybe not the employees that are in there now. I think it's adding another employee and having one of those, either the building or the planning, being the director over it. And this is for discussion. This is Brad's thoughts. Because of it should become fairly routine once we start enforcing this, to have letters that go out, because form letters, that's the initial part. And once we get this going, it's going to start self-policing it somewhat. We have problems across our whole county. And our duty as commissioners is to find the right place to be able to put this and then enforce it. Send the letters out and all that's relatively verbally easily to think about. It takes quite a bit of time for people to do that. You have to follow up and you have to finish once you start that.
That's a part.
And that we put some money aside for maybe a position. We have to think about money enough to go in and clean these places up also. Yes, we can lien the property, but that doesn't mean that that's going to pay the bill. So somebody has to pay that bill. There has to be a process. So I think what we need to do is figure out what department we want to land in, if we're going to put it in a department, figure out a budget, and go from there, because whenever we start cleaning these places up, we're going to have a line of people wanting us to make sure that happens, and not rightfully so, but we have to have the funds to be able to do that. So I'm all for it. We've got a good start on it. So I believe it fits within the whole conceptual part of that department there. Haven't sat down to have a full brainstorming with Jennifer and Darwin of how we can make that work in that department itself. And they might say, you know, we just can't take on that extra, I don't know. Haven't had that full discussion, had a little bit with them. Another thought I had is as we contribute money to the, for weed abatement each year, what if we went out of county department and we paid, it's all through the extension service, and we said, okay, we want you to do our nuisance abatement also. And we're going to contribute this amount of money, and we're going to have this amount for the cleanup side, and you're going to report back to the board of commissioners. That was a thought I had. It didn't stay a long time because of, it would be a struggle. I think the communication might be a struggle, but that's a thought. So those are a couple of thoughts I personally, that you guys, I'll visit with you because we do everything in a public setting, and this is the work. This is on a regular board meeting, but it's a work atmosphere to be able to discuss this. So those are two things, commissioners, I've thought of. Doesn't mean they're the right ones, but at least it's a start of some thoughts. So.
Well, and I appreciate those thoughts, Commissioner, and I agree with you in a lot of ways. I mean, we don't know where to start exactly, but one of the missing elements in that potential proposal, and we'd have to probably talk to the sheriff and see what he thought about the animal side of it, because it's kind of a three-headed monster, for lack of a better term, between nuisance, weeds, and animals. And we want to get a program that addresses all three of those more effectively than we've done in years and years. Carl's got a question.
Yeah, when I heard you was gonna address this issue, I wrote a little letter, if you would like me to address it.
On the position,
On the planning issue.
no, on the position, that,
Well,
as far as I know, Carl, what we came here to do today was talk about the position and how we might go about putting that together. We think we're kind of familiar with the other issues. That's my take. I'll defer to the other commissioners.
Well, part of what I wrote up is that I believe that it's the commissioner's responsibility to do whatever is done. You're the employer, the staff and the planning and building department are the employees. They're gonna work off of your lead or your directions. And I think that's where code enforcement is. Animal enforcement, I think, is a separate issue. But that was what I was given some thought to and was willing to address. And I see no reason why some of this stuff can't actually go forward at present with what you do have in place. But you're missing a big part of what is needed for code enforcement. You do have a form to deal with nuisance complaints, but you don't even have the paperwork that people can fill out that deal with code enforcement. You're missing that. And I had some ideas on that. If you're talking about getting a department head or someone to take care of these issues, I think what I was trying to address is relevant to whatever you do.
Well, on code enforcement, on the building site, we do have a form that we send out, Jennifer, we do it all the time. We have a sheet, we send it out. Darwin's our director in the planning, and for pushing on the land use, we will rely on Darwin as our director in that department. If there's a form or things that is not adequate within that department, then let's hear them, Carl. What is it?
Well, it's the form isn't even there. You haven't even created one yet. Code and land use or code enforcement is separate or different than a nuisance violation.
Absolutely.
And what I'm referring to is code land use violations. And in general, there's a separation between the two. And the way I look at it, it may not be 100% correct, but I think land use and code violations are what happens on a piece of property prior to the owner establishing what the zoning ordinance allows as the primary use of the property. The nuisance ordinances come about after you have established the primary residence and you end up with too many cars and too much junk and the neighbor complains. So nuisance violations, generally you pit one neighbor against another neighbor and then you go to Darwin for a solution. Land use violations are totally different. Land use violations are something that is a crime against the county's ordinance. So, you know, that's just another way to look at it, but they are two separate issues. You have the form for nuisance, but you don't have the paperwork for code enforcement. And to further the comment, I think if you do consider forms for code or land use violations, that it's probably proper to have two separate forms. One, just being a notification to the property owner that they're in violation of your zoning ordinance. And you're looking for someone to self-clean or be responsible enough to do something about it without threatening what the county might do. The second form could be a follow-up letter, giving the landowner a certain time period to actually clean up the mess if he hadn't already cleaned it up. So, I mean, those are things that could be talked about, but you're missing that part, and when you get into code enforcement, if you get your attorney, you get some hard case that's gonna go to court or something, and you're taking a nuisance ordinance form to enforce a code violation, code meaning land use, violation to a higher level, you could be in trouble.
Fully recognize, if we have a position that addresses zoning violations, of course, we need the paperwork to address that, I agree. If we have a person that does building code, we'll need to develop a process for that too. Nuisance, I agree, is totally a separate thing. But we just need to determine whether we have a position for 1, 2, or 3. Now, animal control is another thing that we need to say, yes, this person will address it also or not.
Well, I must not articulate it right. In the building department, they enforce the building code. We hire somebody to do that. In the planning, we have a planning director, does a land use code. My thought was bring in somebody that does a nuisance that's overseen by one of those two in that department. But those people and those departments are in charge and take care of the code violations within their expertise
to their department.
And nuisance is a whole nother leg, exactly as Carl said. And so you have all that. Animal control is a whole nother part of it. On animal control over the years, whenever we get to animal control, if we want to incorporate it in there also, it would be sort of a stretch for me. Because I think that's a conversation to have with the town of Lakeview, become a partner, because of, in the Lakeview area, the animals just don't know the difference in 9th Street and 10th Street and that. So I think there's possible partnership there. North Lake, it's hard to have animal control all the way up there, so we probably have to still use our deputies for the main part, and then send an animal control person up there once a week or whatever. But for the immediate call, sometimes it'd be law enforcement. Those are my thoughts. But I want to be clear, I wasn't molding code for land use and code for building into nuisance. Absolutely not. They're 3 different things. And we already have people in place to take care of the code side of it. And I'm not a planner and I'm not a building expert. We oversee those departments. We put people in those positions because that's where their education is.
Terry?
Well, my question is really about the building code enforcement, and the reason being is because you're at a loss to know when somebody's in violation a lot of times down around. Because we've got, I mean, seriously, I can drive around and I can see that someone's put 2 travel trailers on the same property, and I see no lines to a septic, I see no outhouse, I see, it's like, okay, where does that cross the line? How long can somebody do that without any permit? I'm living here, I'm cooking here, I'm washing my dishes and my clothes here, or at least my dishes or whatever. I'm probably not driving to the public restroom every time I need to use one. And I don't have anything that indicates that I'm using any kind of facility to mediate that. Well, I can't believe that whoever's looking at code is not coming up just to look at stuff that's basically been permitted, that somebody's trying to do right. And driving right past these things, they're heir apparent and not being done right, and there's no, so how do we do this? Do I, John Q. Public, go and say, I think this is a code violation, I want you to come and look at it? Because we tried that on that one incident out on the golf course and got nowhere. And that piece of property, which was supposedly gonna be condemned because It never complied with all of the code. It never got correct, safe stairs up to the door. It never even completely got the ditch to the electricity to it covered properly. So, you know, when I get a permit, how many years do I get to finish the job? How many times, what's my obligation as a landowner to continue to, follow through with the permit process and get those things approved? And yet, this trailer's been there for 7 years probably, maybe longer. Came in about a month before it would not have qualified to be brought anywhere. Has been rented to people over and over. Has no mechanicals for the wood stove that's in it. You know, so what can I, as a citizen, say? I don't wanna put somebody out on the street, I don't wanna make them homeless, but at the same time, I feel like my property value is just not having the ability to improve as long as every time I look and every road I drive down, I'm seeing that type of issue. So what I'm looking for is, how do we come up with a dialogue between the community and the issues that are not being addressed that have been there for a long time?
My thoughts, the reason I put this on the agenda is for us to say yea and nay on a position. It's over the time limit that Darwin can on planning, and it's over the time limit on Jennifer on building. Do we want a position that would actually be the person on the ground? But then it's gonna take some training if we decide. And then on time factor, brought up earlier, we need to work with, it'll be a working process, but we have to start at one point of how do we create a body to do the planning, the building, potentially the nuisance, those separate issues. And is that a full-time, part-time? Is it 2 years, 3 years, 5 years?
Something everybody needs to know, we acknowledge that there's problems out there. We're not going into this blind. We understand there's problems. That's the reason why we're here today and why we're addressing this. Terry, appreciate your comments, because I've been there, done that with you. I know exactly what you're saying, and apologize that we have not been able to get it done over the years. But from this point forward, we're working on that, and that's what we hope the energy comes back to us today. We can throw darts at each other all we want, but we're trying to go forward. And so we're trying to come up with a plan to make this successful in the future. And it's going to take years to get it cleaned up, but as soon as we can get a position started and get the synergies together from code to nuisance and all of it together, we're going to start taking care of some of these problems, because there's none of us want to see those eyesores. None of us want people living in unhealthy situations they are. So we're trying to do this as positive as we can, and there's a lot of high expectations for us to get it done immediately. And we as a board, we're struggling a little bit here, trying to find the exact right place to make this happen and start addressing it. But if we can sort of keep that coming forward, is what kind of recommendations do you guys see out there that can help us move forward? Is it in the building and the planning, or another department, outside organization? Don, go ahead.
Why can't we have a simple form turned in by John Q. Public, and they get a letter that says, clean it up, or we're gonna take it back on, we're gonna add it to your tax bill. And that will be due immediately. Your tax bill will be due immediately. That's real simple, doesn't cost a lot of money, nothing but a couple of letters, once the John Q. Public sends the letter in.
I think that's what we never let you know, Don. We implemented similar to that 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. As far as
on a computer? What if the person doesn't have a computer?
Well, you can come right into our planning department and get the form there. I've had several people do that. We could do better at that, but we did start exactly that similar type of process on the nuisance side of it. as far as being able to state what you say on there about attaching the taxes and they're due immediately, there's statutes that so many years you're able to go out on your taxes and that. Great
Can't you
suggestion.
write it into law that if it's turned in as a nuisance that, or code violation, that, can't you make a rule on that?
I don't know, can we impose, we can do local laws, I don't know if we're able to do that. It's a question for legal counsel, I don't know, no.
You can impose the charge, the cleanup fee, and that kind of thing. You can't make it part of the tax burden of an individual, but you don't need to make it part of the tax burden. You simply impose it, and then you can go and collect it.
Something
And
like that.
Donna, just if you don't mind, I'm gonna kind of help address your question too, because that was kind of at the heart of this. Citizens have to self-report under our system in order to get enforcement. I mean, they come in and fill out the form and the
Have I been
process.
in to see you, Brad? On that particular spot over there? And it was go get on the computer and send in a complaint. And what if that person didn't have a computer at that time, you know? I don't think a computer is the answer. Grabbing a
Well,
form is the proper answer.
Well, you're talking on 11th Street.
Yeah,
I've personally taken the department head down there and requested a letter be sent out and address that on, so.
well, I
yes.
think you're getting there, but I think it's just taking way too long. And I think that there needs to be a time limit on cleaning it up if the county does take it over. You know, I mean, how do you know the guy's gonna even clean it up on a decent basis, you know?
Can I just like one more thing, and I swear I won't say anything else, but, 'cause
Oh, this is a
I
good setting to
wasn't, I
visit.
wasn't trying to suggest anything other than if I think there's a code enforcement, is there any process for me to interact with the building department or whoever's doing that enforcement, who's inspecting those issues? Or are they so busy just inspecting permitted stuff that they don't even have time to look at those anyway? Because that's what I'm thinking is really that, yeah, we for sure need it under our body, there's no question about that. But I know that there's somebody up there, I think, is it like once a week at least or something, or twice a month, I don't know exactly what the schedule is. But if they had a complaint or a concern from a citizen saying, I think that this whole property's in code violation, or it's being lived on without proper things being implemented to make it a legal place to live, are they gonna look at it, or can they even address it? That was really more what my question was.
So we have both Jennifer and Darwin here, and they, I think, can speak to that.
Yeah, on the building, Jennifer, would you speak to it on the building side?
So yes, we have a building inspector that goes up there every week, every Wednesday. Anytime anybody calls anything in or the building official drives by something that he sees there are no permits for, I do send a letter. The person in turn calls me, and most of the time, not all the time, depending if it's in the town site and they are doing what they're supposed to be doing legally, it's gonna start with planning. Planning, we're gonna have to get approval through planning for that home or for what they wanna construct. Once they go there, then they will start pulling building permits, septic permits. The building inspector out there is not code enforcement. I will say that, I agree, we need a full-time code enforcement for the lifetime of Lake County. We need a code enforcement. They will work with the planning and building department and nuisance. They will, when we get something reported to us, they will be notified and they will go and visit that place. They can be the ones that follow up on stuff. As far as building permits go, they last for 180 days, they expire in 6 months. Each time there's an inspection, it goes out for another 6 months. Right there on the form, it is the responsibility of the contractor, if it's a commercial, or a homeowner, if it's residential, to follow through and get those inspections done. There has to be some area where the landowner has to take some responsibility of their project. They need to follow through. If they don't, they have to pay more fees to get an extension on that permit. So they have to call those inspections in. We just don't show up to their space and say, are you ready for an inspection? They have to call that inspection in. That's their responsibility to call that in. We need code enforcement. We are only out there one day a week, and of course they don't see everything. There's no way. Since I've almost been here 10 years, we've only been out there one day a week to do inspections. Unfortunately, we're in a huge county trying to cover the whole county and trying to make that all work out together. They're only in Lakeview 2 days a week. And so it isn't just north or south, we're trying to cover it all. I do send out form letters, those people do call me, I let them know what needs to come into compliance. The building official, when he is out there, or the building inspector, if he has seen numerous buildings, he takes pictures, he sends me the address, I send out a letter right away. In the state of Oregon right now, you can send out, as far as building codes go, you can send out letter after letter after letter. The building codes is requiring a hearings officer to be hired in that county. Right now, Lake County really needs to hire a hearings officer to take that one step further with building codes. Now, as far as planning, I'm not gonna speak on that. I know that a lot of this stuff initiates with planning. They have to sign off before I can issue a permit. We won't issue an address out there unless there's planning approval and there are building permits being pulled. Back long ago, when a group came into Lake County and addressed the whole county, unfortunately, they screwed up. They addressed anything and everything that had a driveway. We don't do that now. We don't issue an address unless there's building permits being pulled and septic permits being pulled. We do not issue power unless there are building permits being pulled, unless there's an address. The only way we will issue power, if it's a pump or a stock well out in the middle of a field that needs for a pivot, animals, we will issue it then. We are trying in the planning and building department to not let people violate the laws as much as we can do from our office. I will say I can't get out in the field. I'm busy from the minute I get into the office to the time I leave. I can take up to 40 calls in a day. I'm extremely busy, I agree. We need a full-time code enforcement. I feel bad for them if they can't pack a firearm.
The general public will follow, the general public will follow through, and if they get a letter from you, they will follow through. It's a lot of other individuals will not, and that's where we need a body to go and visit. Darwin?
First, Jennifer gave an excellent overview, and I want to just recognize Jennifer for all the great work she does. By far, probably one of the best employees in this county. Hands down, I can say that, having been working with her side by side for over 5 years. Excellent employee, stand-up citizen, wonderful family. Getting to the land use side of things, Jennifer does an excellent job on the building side of things, and like she has said, and I can validate that she's got her max load capacity for what she's asked to do. Early on, it was discussed that possibly Karen Smith could take on a bunch of these responsibilities, and I, having taken over for the nuisance ordinance and just the enforcement of that ordinance, when Bob Pardee left the county, it was a 1 or 2 a year kind of thing. Early on, back in June, when we first initially went to Christmas Valley and did our site visit, it was something I wasn't expecting would grow to the level it is now. And I can appreciate the fact that everybody's here and at your expense, traveling down here to this meeting and other meetings that you've attended, wanting to get everything cleaned up. And I absolutely agree, we need to get both, everywhere in this county cleaned up. I mean, you know, as a town council, I also believe that. I see Ray here, appreciate, you know, the work that Ray Sims did prior. He sent out simple form letters that would show how people are out of compliance and how they need to get into compliance. Carl brought up a good issue of not having, and Terry's also touched on this, on how to formally complain on a land use violation. That form does not exist. That was, you know, I think since I've been here, I've actually only processed one of those. And it's an ongoing, we've had discussions with legal counsel that repeat offenders also we need to have some stronger teeth on repeat offenders of violation of our ordinance. I originally came to you guys during these discussions after the sheriff department kind of pulled back on because of how those discussions went and what we wanted to see as a commissioner level and probably with my department as well. But I originally felt that I could handle taking on this added workload. I'll say that easily since word got out to the public that this was part of your budget and that something more was going to be done, it's been a tremendous workload intake, especially just with phone calls of people trying to follow up on not only a complaint they may have filed, but how to file another complaint or additional things like that. And so I have changed my position. I still have a hard time spending the money trying to change what I feel is more of a social issue with how people live. And I say that mostly because of the fact that the nuisances that we have seen over time, and prior to me even taking over, we have a file on all these, and they are repeat offenders in most cases. They will clean up for a time, and then they will go back, or possibly even worse situation than they had before. And again, it has a lot to do with the way our ordinance is written, especially the nuisance ordinance, and that's what I'm mostly addressing at this moment, because we spent a whole lot of time and resources trying to make people clean up, and then eventually we can get to a point where we will put a lien on that property and try to recover the cost that we've spent in making people comply with the ordinance that we have in place. I say I have a hard time with spending that money because I think it's going to be very hard to change people's lifestyle if that's what they're kind of ingrained to doing. Now, we're getting a lot of people coming to the county who can barely afford it. And I've been quoted as saying that before, that there are a lot of people who will buy this land because it's very cheap, and they will move with everything they have and not get the permits that they're required to get to be in compliance with building or land use. And that is a great problem that I don't think is going to go away even after we get the properties cleaned up. But I am in full support of you guys making a decision on hiring for this position, and I think that moving forward it will need to be evaluated, ongoing, just to see if it's working, if it's financially responsible with the way we think that this is a benefit to the county. And everybody knows that having a cleaned up county would be a benefit visually. Financially, it certainly could to those nearest some of the worst violations. But I think self-policing is something that until the value of these properties is much higher, the few thousand properties we have up in North Lake that are all, $1,000 a lot, and any John Doe off the street can buy these lots online or various ways. They will buy that thinking that they can just go and move onto the property and ask for an address. And that's the calls we get. How do I get my address? I'm starting to live on this property or whatever. And so I'm supportive. I have mentioned to each of you and to Jay, Colin, our HR guy, I'd be willing to put this under my supervision, ultimately, reporting back to you guys on how this program's working and when needed, it would come before you as we move further up the process to eventually put in a lien, which has to go through the courts, so.
So Darwin, not to get in the weeds, but you just mentioned something that I think is kind of key there. Jennifer, as you said, you had a great overview on the building program and permitting, et cetera. That person that buys that $1,000 lot, they don't live on it until they went through the process.
They're not supposed to.
Well, and that's what we need to, that's what we've all agreed we need to be enforcing. Because they don't pull a permit, they don't pull an address until it's went through planning and got the appropriate
And
approval. And that goes to building, and building issues the appropriate permits in order to do.
And that's why we need a full-time, or at least
Exactly.
for the short term, we need a full-time person, because I'll have to admit, I haven't been to Christmas Valley since our site visit in June. That's just how it is. I haven't been to any meeting outside of the county since prior to June, and that is, just shows how much work that we've got going on right now, and it's not gonna slow down. Solar is picking up, and there's going to be multiple applications on my desk for solar, and I got hired as a planning director. I didn't get hired as a nuisance. I probably wouldn't want to take the job had I originally known that I was gonna be enforcing nuisance and some of the other things that have been asked to do.
But
Gratefully.
now that you have it, you love it though.
Oh, yeah, love getting my name thrown out there as,
Yeah.
someone who's not doing their job and should be replaced.
Well, and that's what we're trying to
Yeah,
support,
that's-
Darwin. We're trying to support our staff, our citizens. I mean, Commissioner Winters alluded to it earlier. We want positiveness to come out of this. I think, and you and I have chatted about this, I wished I had as much compassion for folks as you did, because I do believe that we can correct in the high 90% of the problem areas that we have that do degrade our communities and our neighbors in our communities. I really do. And, I think we had this discussion a couple of months ago in one of the meetings that many people that buy property that doesn't have a nuisance, we'll say, not a code violation, but a nuisance problem, they create it. And it doesn't matter how much wealth you have, you don't have to create the problem. And I can appreciate folks that are just barely getting by, and they might get their rig towed in, that live someplace else and buy this low-value piece of property and they've got it on payments over 10 years for $1,000. I can empathize and sympathize, but I think the greater responsibility we have is to our overall citizenry, and I don't think any of us disagree with that, including you. And it's just a matter of what kind of program do we put in place in order to get the kind of compliance we need to make all of our citizens feel really good about our communities. And future, as you were talking about that, I'm thinking of that future development. I'm thinking about that future land value increase as we go forward, whether it's a Red Rock biofuel down here or whatever. But in order throughout the county to attract more businesses and more opportunities, we've got to have a place that people drive into for the first time and say, yep, that's where I want to live. There's a lot of pride in that community, and there's a lot of opportunity.
And that's definitely why I feel that, if we watch this closely and we get the success that we're hoping for, then we realize that it needs to be hopefully a short-term, position, because then we can redistribute that money that's being spent somewhere else. On some of the other programs that the sheriff has asked for, with more deputies helping with the crime that's going on in the community. Because there's a serious problem with that too. And they can't be everywhere at once either,
So it's really obvious to me here, two things. We're all in agreement we need to hire somebody. That's pretty obvious, especially talking to the department here. The other thing, Darwin, is how hard is it for you to put together that form for the public on the land use side?
Well, and I'm glad you bring that up.
There should be plenty of boilerplates out there of other counties or whatever, so it sounds like that's something we need to get in place right away. Us as a Board of Commissioners need to decide where our nuisance / at least bring the code enforcement things to the right departments, get that person hired right away and where that's gonna land. But those two things right now seem like, at least from the audience, is pretty darn important.
Not to speak for Carl, but the 30-plus properties that we saw in Christmas Valley, most of those were land use violations. According to the way our code is written, I don't agree with that. And yet, you know, a form can be easy to develop. The nuisance form was developed almost word for word from exactly how our ordinance is written. And so then it became a check the box kind of form, and show some photo evidence that a nuisance is going on, and then we will try to follow up on that as quickly as we can. A land use violation can be a whole different thing. I mean, our code is a thick code, and, you know, the nuisance ordinance was 6 pages. So it will be, I think, even a shorter form, because then we're just gonna ask you know, please tell us which, you know, violation is going on. But again, if we hire someone, they'll be able to spend the time needed to create these documents, make sure they understand our code, and then work with legal counsel or the other departments to make sure that we're interpreting our code correctly, and then, you know, making sure we're applying it.
So my whole emphasis is for us to agree whether there's a need, and if we all concur, meaning us, we know out there. And then do we proceed with hiring a position, and is that position part-time, full-time, 2 years, whatever? And that position would have to have a lot of training from building and land use. And we probably have to critique the land use things because there's disagreement a little bit. The first step is, do we want to proceed with the position?
I'll just simply say, once again, I want to proceed. I mean, that's why it was put even in the form it was into the budget. There's a need. I don't know that today we're going to get agreement among the three of us on what all we want to see in a position. I know you asked Greg Seeger, our building official, to send over position description of code enforcement. I think that is a good place to start to be built upon, but I think we also need to, at least by majority, agree on what all we want this position to cover. And I appreciate the fact that the Commissioner, you're talking about, you know, horizon, time horizon. I don't know that I could suggest that it's this way or that. And I will go back just for our discussion today, and not to put the sheriff on the spot, but that's the reason that my mind went there. We've all recognized his need in his department for more law enforcement, and it kind of addresses the long-termness of a permanent position in code enforcement, nuisance abatement, animal control, etc. If we had a position in the sheriff's department, just as an example, and once again, Sheriff, I know we've had this discussion, but just to show where my mind was when we went into the budget proceedings, that if that person was hired with law enforcement type credentials, not that they have to have those to fulfill this for most of the work that would go on, it would then, in my opinion, evolve to where the need for those types of activities would reduce. And with the sheriff's leadership and the undersheriff, they could reassign that person to other duties to meet some of the shortfall in law enforcement. So we would never be looking at this position going away. If we go and put it in the building planning department and we think the time horizon is such that eventually it's going to be no more than part-time or less, then we have a whole different approach that we need to take on this as we look to hire the position. So that's my...
Well, I think it'd be appropriate if Sheriff make some comments.
As Jennifer said, this is going to be a full-time position for the existence of eternity. If we think for 1 second that this is going to be cleared up in 3 or 4 years, that's not happening. And I'd like to make it very clear that these violations are not criminal in nature. We call them crimes. They're not crimes. They're simply violations. It's not like the sheriff's office will go out there, if somebody commits a crime, we can make them arrest and remove them from their property. If they commit this violation, it's gonna be a lengthy, drawn-out court hearing and procedures until the judge signs an order removing these people from their property. And that's what this process is going to be. If we get that person in the sheriff's office, I can guarantee you they will probably be assigned more to dealing with criminal complaints, more so than they will be dealing with this nuisance and these code violations. It's because that's just the nature of the beast. We cannot keep up with the criminal activity right now, and if we get another person that has arrest authority, that person is probably gonna be directed to deal with criminal things more so than civil things. So that's where we are. Paul might have a different spin on that, but that's the way I see it right now.
And in our discussion, Sheriff, I think that's why we kind of moved away from there, but I just wanted to throw that out there for some background and information sharing, because I truly respect our law enforcement personnel and the work that they do each and every day and the shortage that you have. So, you know, it was an educational process for me when I first proposed that as a possible thing to do, and right now we're in that world of just trying to figure out what's gonna be the best. And so-
Agreed, and when we discussed it, I thought, you know, I wanted that deputy so bad that I was willing to sacrifice here and sacrifice there to try to get that deputy, and realistically, it wasn't very well thought out on my part.
Well, it was sprung on you, you know, in a short amount of time. Yeah, we're working through it as a county, trying to get to the right fit. So thank you.
Carl has a question.
Carl.
One of the things, meanwhile, while you're in the process of trying to figure out what to do, one of the things that could really help, especially on the north end, is some advertisement of what is allowed and what isn't allowed. And this is something that I've asked you to do for 3.5 months. And I think it's so simple. You don't need no more staff. Take about an hour to write up an ad and let somebody know what is and isn't allowed. We got violations coming and going up there like, it's unreal what's happening. It's like an influx of these people coming in and placing containers, building buildings, storing stuff, abandoning travel trailers of all sorts on property that probably doesn't even belong to them. And people, I think if people knew that Lake County was starting to do something, and they would realize that if you were advertising what is and is not allowed.
Educating the public first as one component.
I think another point, this mess that Don has referred to on the southwest side of town, that's gotten beyond a land use or nuisance violation. That's a safety issue. And why in the world someone doesn't send somebody down there to clean that up, I have no idea. It just blows my mind that something that bad can sit there for so long with nothing being done. And that's not good.
I think with any enforcement, there has to be consequences. Not being real familiar with the ordinances myself, it seems that the ultimate thing lies with taking it to a judge, which is timely in itself. But, you know, if there are consequences written in there, the monetary part affects anyone immediately. But, you know, just to send out letters, people are going to basically ignore them for the most part. If they do respond, it's going to be the honest person that really does want to, but it's the other people that we're concerned with. Anyway, just to bring that up. The other thing is this started with a budget issue. I was wondering if it does end up in the planning department, if it couldn't be incorporated into the fee structure somewhere, if it's gonna be an ongoing thing, that it wouldn't have to necessarily be in the budget, would be self-supporting in, you know, in the SDCs or whatever that are in effect now, in the fees. that it could be perhaps funded in part through that?
So let me just touch on that. Our fees are probably one of the lowest in the state currently. You know, the east side of the state generally has extremely low fees to encourage development is how I've kind of looked at that. And heard other board
Are you
commissioners,
making
county courts say
sacrifices with that, though?
But there's, like my whole general budget, that revenue that I'm bringing in is only 7,500 for the year, for all planning fees. So, you know, saying that 7,500, or say we doubled it and we doubled the fees, there's no chance that's gonna cover a position and any of the amount of cleanup, because the cleanup's all gonna cost us up front and then put as liens, which, in my opinion, are never gonna get recovered, because of the fact that people will just walk away from properties that are $1,000 in value and the lien's $4,000 or $5,000 to do a cleanup. I mean, so the county's gonna end up then having to resell those after a foreclosure, and we're never going to recover our costs, other than, you know, through a land sale, we can recover our actual costs, but to sell a property, but clean up a property, I'm not sure legally if we can make that as part of the, money we can try to reimburse.
We can't let the fees keep us from, or the cost keep us from going forward, and I don't think it's ever going to fully fund it. But I do think that as we get going, that we will see a reduction with the amount of things we have to go out there and clean up. I really believe that, as soon as we start enforcing this. I'll just throw this out there. I've already come up with this thought, and being government, being public process, you have to do all this in public, so it's sort of tough, but I always try to look at the synergies and try to look at where we get more efficient or whatever. Within our building department right now, Jennifer is there, and then we contract out for our building official. And I just see Lake County continue to grow. I'm a very positive person that way. I hear the negative out there, but we're growing right now, and we're gonna have to invest, and we're gonna have to push our building department to another level. So we're trying to get Jennifer trained now as much as we can. Time doesn't allow because she's the only one in there with the contract person. I think it's time to look at where we're gonna be with our building official. Is it time to push Jennifer to the training and become the building official, the department head, and put a person underneath her? If that's something we should consider. I see efficiencies there because of its protecting and investing in the future of Lake County. So my preliminary thought for discussion and getting Jennifer in a meeting here would be to move to a department head situation there, stay with the contract part for a while, bring her up to the building official eventually through training, and oversee nuisance/code enforcement person underneath her that could take some of the calls during the day, and she could go and start doing the training and do some of those other things. Just a thought, not for a decision. Think about it. Sorry, Jennifer, to hit in a public meeting, that's the way we work. Darwin, you guys, but it's something to think about. And I've had a little bit of that. That's one option. We could make Darwin the department head, do the same thing that way, or we could go to a whole other department. But I'm trying to articulate that if we can double over and make us more efficient and look for the future in our building also, because I don't think we're going to be contracting forever in our building department. Look around. North Lake's growing like you can't believe. Lakeview area is growing. Everything's growing right now. We're getting more and more need, not only on the nuisance and code side, but on the inspection side, on that. On the planning side, we're getting, Darwin told me, I don't know, we had like 4 or 5 land use issues this last one or this meeting this month. Things are starting to move in a positive way. So.
Right.
What is happening here is we're getting squatters in town, and it happened right down the street from me. The city water office called the landowner. Landowner says, I don't have a renter there. He came into town, we had law enforcement up there. I've been telling people that if you see somebody moving into a vacant house, and they're only taking just a little bit of furniture at a time, that means they're out scavenging furniture. They're squatting in that house, more than likely. call somebody and have them checked. If you know the landowner, call them. If you got trailers coming in on people's property and you know the landowner, call them. Hey, there's a trailer on your property, do you know it's there? You know, it's not just the law enforcement or these guys here or your code enforcement officers. The public has to be involved just as well as everybody else.
And that's where if we had a code enforcement, that person would be out and about talking to folks and amplifying the citizens' participation.
But you know, it would help if, you know, if the citizens, you know, if they call, say, hey, you know, you got somebody on your property, are they supposed to be there? Landowner comes down, hey, you gotta leave. You know, that saves that code enforcement officer a lot of time of having to go up there and stuff if the landowner evicts them, but you don't know where they're gonna go next. They'll go to somebody else's property or maybe government land, you know, then your government can get involved.
Now, back to Commissioner Winter's comment about potentially looking at Jennifer moving up. What we have in front of us, even if that happens, we still don't need a code enforcement.
That would be what's on hiring a full-time person underneath that.
It could be, we can move that person into place. But what we need, my thoughts, we need to decide today, not 3 years down the road, do we need a code enforcement at this time?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Shao?
Yeah, definitely.
Then there's a lot of research that needs to be done. We're working with the building officials, with Darwin, as far as packaging and with human resources to package a position of what it entails with that position, how it's gonna be paid for, and then bring that position back to the county commissioners for us to finesse it or approve it. And that's kind of my emphasis. It's not gonna happen today, but if there's consensus to move in that direction, I'd like to spend the time to build, like it could be 30% building, it could be whatever. Have to work with the HR person to develop that position and as efficiently and as soon as we can. And who it would be underneath, Darwin has awkward. At this time, that's where I would place it, working with Jennifer and the other side. As we develop that position, we might next week change the mind and might put it in underneath you, Jennifer. But we have to move today, at least concurrence, that we start looking at that position and get a job description.
I definitely concur, but I want to ask either the sheriff or the undersheriff another question, and that is with animal control enforcement. I know you folks get tagged with that as well. And just how big a job you would perceive that to be if it was truly done right throughout the county.
Well, it's going to be a huge undertaking unless, first of all, where are all these animals going to go? You know, what facility are we going to use when a dog is running at large? Right now, when we have animal enforcement problems, dogs running at large, they don't get addressed. We don't have time to address that. Even with the animal enforcement officer, as big as the county is, and the problems that the town of Lakeview has with animals, it's going to be a huge undertaking for one person. How do you divide up the responsibilities and the areas in which they are going to work? Because they're going to be pinging north, they're going to be coming south, they're going to be in the town because there's a ton of calls on a weekly basis. So what we do right now is we address the dangerous animals at large. The safety violations we address immediately. Other than that, we ask the public if they know who the dog belongs to contact the owner and see if they can't capture the dog up or whatever animal it is and get it back to the owner. But there's a lot of things that need to be addressed. Where are we going to put the animals? How are we going to feed the animals? The veterinarian care for the animals. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into this that I don't think we've even scraped the tip of the iceberg. I think it's going to be a huge financial burden. Can one person handle it? I think that's going to have to be determined down the road under discussion and when we view the overall, how big the problem is.
Well, and I think you're validating what I didn't think about, Sheriff, when I threw this proposal out to start with, because we recognized the need that we've had animal control enforcement problems, we've had code enforcement, we've had nuisance. And by packaging all that into one, it really isn't realistic. You just described it, it's a big problem, and the point you really made that we talked about later was, okay, you go out and pick an animal up, or two, or three, or four, or whatever it is, where are we taking them? How are we gonna handle that? Because that's, you know, in this day and age, that's 24-hour-a-day care almost for those animals. And so you validated, I just wanted to kind of get it out on the record, because as good an intent as we had to address all the problems to start with, we probably can't address all the problems to start with.
You can. In Christmas Valley here recently, we picked up 30 animals at one residence. We took them all down to the animal hospital, lodged them there. And what is the cost of an animal per day? $30, $40?
It varies depending on what they are.
So there's almost $300 a day to house those animals.
Yeah.
And the way I see it, if we are going out there and we are taking animals because they don't have licenses or running at large, we're going to have a ton of animals at the Lake Animal Hospital. We can't afford, at least on the budget right now, to pay the daily cost just to store the animals. And when we take them there, they have care, they have examinations, they get their vaccinations and such, which is an additional cost. So that's something that we're going to have to evaluate.
Thank you.
I'll leave that to Commissioner Shannon to come up with a solution. I have no solution on that.
Actually, on the dog, the solution, I've already started working on that with the new town manager to try to get the time to sit down with the sheriff and others. Haven't talked to the sheriff yet. I've had about a week of, been busy for a week, so there's some preliminary discussions that the new town manager and I had, trying to look back to what we've talked about for many years of joint animal control. All the things you talked about, all those things are what it takes to have animal control. Is there a cost to it? Yes. You have to try to find out how you can make it work with what we have available. We do have Lakeview Animal Hospital here. Can we go into a contractual agreement with them and find out if we can get a reduced cost? There's a lot of things, if we look at it as we can't do it because of this, we'll never get it done. Is we've got to take and say, this is what the costs are, and this is the way we're going to make it happen. And so, haven't had the time to sit down with the sheriff. He's been taking care of some pretty serious drug things and other things going on. They're working hard on that side. Some of these places you see some of the nuisances out there, they're being watched for other reasons too occasionally. So the sheriff's department's quite busy to spend their time doing this, but that sheriff, 2 weeks ago with Roberta, I had that discussion. Haven't been able to set up a date for us all to get together and talk about maybe joint animal control at some level. So.
And what I have addressed, commissioners, is only the animals at large. We have a lot of neglect and abuse cases that need to be resolved immediately, because I don't think anybody in this room or the community, for that fact, will deal or tolerate the abuse or the neglect of an animal. We have to address those immediately, and there's a lot of them out there.
Okay.
My whole emphasis is, are we in consensus that we proceed at a position as far as developing something and then bring it back?
I thought we were at budget time, so I've been there for a while, yes.
Well, the budget time wasn't the county commissioners meeting to discuss it out. And that was kind of tossed out there. So, anyway, we will, I'll get with our HR person, Darwin and Jennifer, and see what type of position we would pull together. Get with Ann, the finance person, to see what funding is available, and then bring it back to the full board.
I concur.
Okay. Any other comments? on that
I have
subject.
one last
I
comment.
knew you would.
Is there any chance that the county could ask for an increase in the tax base for something like that?
I think we maxed out without, it had to be a levy or something in
Yeah, it'd have
a,
to
apart
be a
from
bond.
the
It'd
tax
have to be a
base.
bond.
Yeah.
That we can't increase the tax rate. It's been locked in.
Or
by-
something of that nature, I should say.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, it'd be a levy or a bond.
Yeah, why not do that? Try to
And anything there would go out to the public for their consideration.
Yeah, and if they're so concerned about animal control, then they'd vote for it.
Mhm. And we need to also include the Humane Society to what they can contribute to some point. Of course, they are a volunteer group, and don't have financing, but they may have ideas. It seems like Commissioner Winter has taken the animal control, so I'll leave the levy or the bond in his arena.
As far as the tax levy or bond, I'm not in support of it this time going forward with that. My whole time, we haven't went out for a tax levy or a bond. I think before we even consider anything like that, we find out what we need, find out the cost of it.
Yeah.
And if we can operate within the dollars that we've already, the taxation that's already there, that's where we need to be. As this whole board, I hate to speak for the whole board, we've been very conservative as far as taking care of the taxpayers' dollars. I'm not real comfortable going out right now asking for more taxpayer dollars. I think within our own budget is we need to find a way to fund it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that suggests is, as you mentioned, what can we do now? What is the need, and what's a gap, or is there a gap? And do we address that gap?
Well, and I think to Commissioner Winter's point, and Don, that's a good question, but I think another source, and we don't have Stacy in here, and it's not gonna be huge, but it's much bigger than what we think. We have someone, we'll say, that's overseeing that program, whether it's a joint program with the town of Lakeview and the county at large. When we have enforcement, I know back in the day, it's probably been 15 years ago since we had animal control. I live in Paisley. All of my pets were licensed. They were taken to the vet and given shots because I was concerned about being in violation of our animal control because we had an active participant out there or party that was enforcing it. And so I think, to Commissioner Winter's point, we have a source of revenue we don't currently generate because no one is fearful of having to do that. So we get the program in place and we notify folks that we will be enforcing this. I think we will see a lot of revenue generated right there.
Be a good start.
Yeah.
Good, contribute.
Okay.
Any other discussion on that subject of code enforcement? Any liaison updates?
Yeah, I do need to, I believe you guys are aware, but there was, as I said on the wolf depredation committee, we have a confirmed wolf depredation that happened in the Winter Rim area. And will hit the news today, 8 o'clock this morning, and it is confirmed. So there's not any extra duties for the wolf depredation committee to do at this time. If the owner of the animal turns it in as a loss or anything, then we will apply for those dollars. This heifer calf's still alive at this time. It's probably gonna survive okay, but it definitely is confirmed, and it's relatively hard to make sure that it's wolf and get a confirmation, so it's pretty big news whenever this is confirmed wolf depredation in Lake County. So I think what we'll see, this is Brad's guess, I think what we'll see is as certain permittees start gathering in the Winter Rim area, I think they will probably have less animals come in this year. And there's no absolute way to predict that, but we could see a start of a trend this year again, so we have the wolves here now. And Denise did notify the Wolf Depredation Committee, all of us that's on that, so did want to report on that.
I've got a couple of things. Next Wednesday, I'm gonna be in Salem. As both of you know, once I found out a little bit more clear what our task force on drought, that the governor appoints a committee. I was appointed kind of represent Eastern Oregon. And I asked after the first meeting to perhaps appoint one of the other two commissioners, one from Deschutes and one from Polk County, to take my place, because it was really more misleading committee in what they were doing. They were doing on emergency drought possible solutions, and when I was there and gave my spiel, it was more on a long-term basis, and a lot of it comes back to what our county's about, and that is where this water originates from, which is the uplands, which typically is in our natural resource-based community. Everyone, I think, here that knows me knows the passion that I have about the health of our natural resources on our public lands. And so the long and the short is I received a call from the assistant to the governor, and she asked me if I would stay engaged, which I have through trying to call in. They're all-day meetings, but to the key points and staying up with the draft recommendations that are going forward. The committee was given a short time frame to develop some recommendations that the governor would sign off on and be presented to the state legislature in the new session. Even though it doesn't start then, this is due November 1st, they've asked me to consider doing somewhat of a minority report on the long-term vision to go with the short-term solution. So, long way around to tell you that I will be in person over there on next Wednesday, the 12th. And the second part that it really does tie into it is we've all been working on the Red Rock project. But as it relates to the legislation off of federal lands, we are making some significant inroads to legislation being dropped by Senator Wyden to allow for this area, which we're referring to as a pilot area, to be able to show through good monitoring the positive benefits of removing the historic slash that has been a huge contributor to the size, severity, cost, and destruction of our public lands, and use it in a positive way as biomass for biofuel production with the incoming Red Rock company. This area that we're talking about will include all of Lake and Klamath, part of Deschutes, and perhaps part of Modoc County in the area that would be considered. And we've got some really good news just recently, as of last night, with TNC, the Nature Conservancy. The director, or the national director, is very much getting on board with this. His employees out here in the state of Oregon, Mark Stern at the state office, and Craig Bentz, who we've all worked with for Klamath and Lake County, are getting very engaged in this subject. And the whole problem with it, just to share for information, it's all about qualifying lands, because all the non-federal lands do qualify for the renewable energy credits. Federal lands don't, but you have to go into the renewable energy standard program and open that up. And Congress has been unwilling in past efforts by Senator Wyden. That's why we scaled it down to a pilot area and not open it up, but administratively by rule allow us to be able to allow for energy credits to be applied to these lands. And through that monitoring over this 10-year pilot, we may be able to convince others that have been more skeptical that we should allow for biomass slash to be utilized and classified that way. So working on that, and we're making some really great strides. We hope the legislation will get dropped. I don't know if they're going to have a lame duck session or not, but we're hopeful that sometime in the next short period of time that happens.
Just a couple other things I never did on real fast. Oregon Transportation Commission, I'll be at that meeting next week in Salem. We will be having quite some brainstorming on the Connect Oregon process. And also with the subcommittee on transportation, legislatures are going to be reporting back on their meetings around the state of Oregon at that time, so it'll give me an opportunity to be able to push more on some of our highway issues. Also talk about the formula a little bit, possibly on the revenues that could come into the counties on the gas and registration tax, if we could show some support for that this next legislative year. The other thing, our landfill manager is also here, which is Kevin Hawk also. He has hit the ground running as we're working on our small landfill exemption to be able to add a new cell and extend the life of our landfill for 60 years. That's just huge as we're working on this. That will be inclusive of closing the existing landfill, the new landfill. It's three-part permitting. That would be for the landfill closure, it would be for the tipping shed, and for the new landfill. And it'd be laid out. He's working with our consultant, Mark Inger, already, and our DEP person, Joe Gingrich, just hit the ground running, and that permit process is in place. It's going to be put in here within the next couple weeks. So looking forward to that. That's huge for Lake County.
Well, Commissioners, you say that, and I think that can't be overstated, and we have folks throughout the county who are present today. You know, I don't know much about landfills, started learning quite a bit, and what Commissioner Winters said is exactly right. They don't, DEQ does not do these small landfill exemptions anymore. The fact that we are on the leading edge of getting it done and extending the life of our landfill, instead of the potential of having to ship out our waste and the cost savings to our citizens, it is immense. And it's really good. Commissioner Winters has worked really hard on this over the last couple of years, and we're really hopeful. And so thank you.
It's big.
While you're on the roads thing, and we have our new road picture here, Bear Flat Road always comes up over the years with emergency response confusion. Coming in from 97, the Silver Lake Road.
Klamath Mars, Bear Flat, over here on
Bear Flat. When I drove through there, I didn't see any milepost signs on the Lake County side.
We don't have milepost signs on any county roads.
Yeah. It's hard for a person to respond and know. Anyway, just something for Kevin to work on.
You know, Christie, very much aware of that after our meeting in Silver Lake, and I don't think Kevin's been brought up to speed on that at all. The process of that is that whenever we do rename that road to be in named on the Klamath side for emergency response, is every homeowner on there that has an address has their checking accounts and all that. So it's a little bit more of a process than just saying we're going to rename the road. It impacts people in their lives quite a bit. So
I'm just saying, it's been on the table for some years,
yeah,
as long as we progress it.
absolutely. Well, I didn't know it was still on the table. Our new road official in the office will be working on that.
Okay. You just got saying something else, Kevin. And the ATV on our road closure.
ATV, I can give a little bit of an update on the ATV. We have a request from the ATV group, I guess you might as well say, of 2 roads they would like to have opened. That's Old Lake Road, and then there's some confusion now. It's called the Frederick's Butte Road, even though I call it the Sinks Road, a short section there. We've asked for being both those are in North Lake, we have a committee up there. We've asked for them to get together and make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners before we would consider amending that. Ron Wilson hit right during fair time and all that, and kids going back to school and families, and he said they didn't have time to pull the whole committee together. So he's supposed to get the whole committee together here and then get a response back to us. And Wade Bryant and John Lane, I let them know that that process we were using as a Board of Commissioners before we would either continue with those ones closed or open them. So waiting on that recommendation from that committee. But Denise, I don't think you've heard anything from
I haven't.
Ron at this time.
I did touch base with them last week, but they haven't had that opportunity.
And my update, on the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife Service habitat mapping that was discussed at the AOC District 2 meeting. For the audience, the state habitat, Fish and Wildlife Habitat has mapping that shows where the main habitat, core habitat, et cetera, is, and there's many flaws in it. The unfortunate aspect about that is that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the federal, relies on that map for their decision-making. The Mineral Management Services of the Interior Department relies on that map for the mineral withdrawals that's pending. And that subject has been brought up to ODF, WF many times, and we were suggesting maybe a consultant. At the SageCon meeting last Friday, I was in Baker City. I made sure that the head honchos was aware of it, who they were not. So I think we may get some movement on that.
Good. That's
Sometimes
very good.
gravity and caca tends to flow downhill. If you know what-
Thanks for pushing that on forward. It
Yeah.
seemed like it's something to definitely have the discussion. And you think all the organizations that's impacted by that, to be able to, and the counties, to get a consultant might be reachable. And then when you hear what went on, I can't remember, Montana or Wyoming, whenever they had the consultant and they went from 100,000 acres down to 20,000 acres. That's economic development right there.
The first emphasis is for these state agencies to get it correct. If they don't, we go a different route.
Well, thank you for taking that forward.
And also, as you know, we've been pressing broadband and some cell phones for some time now. As you may know, School of Paisley will be getting fiber, which is a big plus. Once you get fiber to the school, then the internet service provider can be able to expand it out even more so. Some of the lake areas, they're very deficit. We're working with a provider out of Christmas Valley. As soon as his haying season gets over, we hope to get something up in there. But some of the big issue is over in Warner Valley, and like Plus doesn't even have cell phone coverage. We've been working on that ever since being in the office and keep getting rejected. So I'll be going also to Salem on Wednesday to talk with the governor's policy advisor and legislative director on education and broadband, and see if we can get a little more factor of momentum going on getting, in addition, SCOED, South Central Oregon Economic Development District, Ginger, in the background. Now working together, information in Surprise Valley, MoDOC. We have an agreement with MoDOC because Warner Valley is almost identical to Surprise Valley as far as need and the barrier of the mountains to get over. So we can join with them together information so that come next spring, maybe we can have a proposal together for a larger USDA grant or a National Telecommunication grant to get something to enhance the broadband over to the residents in Warner Valley and Surprise Valley. And if we can get something that enhances broadband, hopefully we can also couple that with cell phone service to Flush area. That's what I have.
Are there any department updates?
Denise? Dolly? Jennifer? Department updates?
Building department's busy. We've almost issued 500 permits this year.
And can you put a geographical spread on that?
Nothing really south, unless Red Rock comes in soon. Except for, I guess, the 42nd group down there has purchased permits to remodel. In North Lake County, North Lake County is a lot of permits. And then the rest is really commercial, a lot of commercial going around here.
Do we have leader update for, you got an update?
I just was gonna say, we recently just went through for our Lake County Transit program, we just went through our national review. We came out pretty well, we've got a couple of policies we need to get in place, but other than that, our transit program, they were really impressed with how our providers are doing and how the county as the agency is doing. And just really impressed with how much our programs have grown. We've never had a compliance review before, so I was glad that they didn't pull our funding. And actually, they pointed out to the state where we probably could utilize additional funding, so yay.
Always take one.
I love
So
transit,
then,
so.
Denise, you know, you inherited that program maybe right when you came into here to the courthouse, but the improvement in that program is like 100-fold because of the work you've done. And those meeting the transportation needs of many who have not had those opportunities. So we owe you a great deal of thanks, the whole county does. And, you know, Commissioner Gessner was talking about the improvement in the internet connections there in Paisley. And I know a couple of years ago you reached out to CenturyLink, and as they saw fit in their budgeting process, that the eventuality of getting that in was started with what we did. And so thank you on that front too for those students.
See if they did respond. Anything for public on legal?
It's one of those rare moments where we have nothing for regular session and nothing for executive session.
Excellent. And for many of you came today a long drive, we have concurrence that we'll look at a position because it's overly needed and code enforcement. And I'll keep you abreast as we go on that. Thank you. If nothing else, then 11:41, meeting adjourned.